Hello and welcome to the very first episode of Access Granted. I'm here with Dr. Rebecca Graham and Nick Ruane. How are you today?
Oh, good. Thank you for having us. I'm very excited about this new thing we're trialling. How about you, Nick?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. It's really great to be here among friends, and we're looking forward to the discussion today.
So we're going to try and let us know in the comments of our social media, of my social media and all that kind of thing. We're going to try and make this a regular thing to talk about the topics that are currently in circulation for the disability community and maybe a bit of health as well. We'll see. So what are some of the comments that caught your eye, or topics that caught your eye in the community this week?
Oh, well, the big one for us, obviously, is the 11-year-old that got picked up by police here in Hamilton, where I live. She was climbing a bridge, and then she got misidentified as a missing 20-year-old who was in community care and had absconded. And as a result of that misidentification by the police, she was taken to Henry Bennett, which is our local mental health unit, where nobody confirmed her identity. She looked similar, but nobody actually made sure it was the right person. And because of that, she was then, Health New Zealand confirmed yesterday that she was given 2 doses, so 2 separate doses on 2 separate occasions of haloperidol, which is an antipsychotic medication. So pretty horrendous.
Sorry, Blake, you go.
So I saw that yesterday and I was just blown away how somebody could such a make a big mistake. Now I don't know what Nick's gonna say next, but I have to give the government a little bit of credit here because it seemed to rock the whole parliament. So I do give a bit of bipartisan credit here for the sitting administration and the opposition parties, and I commend them for their response. Someone that stood out for me in particular was Mental Health Minister Matt Ducey. I was very impressed with his comments around this. What would you have to say on this, Nick?
Yeah, I'd have to adopt a similar position on this. This seemed to kind of move out of a political response on this one. I think you saw everyone from the Prime Minister down kind of taking the view of human beings on this one, and particularly the Prime Minister took a view of a parent being particularly shocked that this could happen to almost anybody in our country, and I think that kind of set the tone for how all of our politicians responded. But there's just so many layers of failure here, from the police, from the health workers. It's just really, really shocking. But if we really look into what happens to people, particularly people on the autism spectrum who interact with our police, this is not a new situation. These types of incidents happen regularly. And so, but this one was particularly shocking. But no, it was good to see our politicians reacting humanely on this one.
And I thought some of the media that Dame Dugan did around this was so on point too. He did a great job of. He was obviously irate. You could tell that in some of the interviews. But he did a great job of raising awareness but keeping his composure under his anger at the same time. I really respected that from him. I don't know if either of you saw that, but I was really impressed by his, commentary around this.
I mean, I thought Dane did well, but I'm going to disagree with both of you about our politicians. And the reason I'm disagreeing with both of you about our politicians is that they didn't know. So that is the only reason they responded quite well, is because they were blindsided and they didn't have time to actually craft anything or dig into it. And the reason they didn't know is that 2 weeks earlier when the incident happened, it wasn't reported. So police are meant to report that sort of thing, they didn't. And the hospital are meant to report that sort of thing, and they hadn't. And it only got reported after the news story broke in the media. And so because of that, the politicians weren't notified. So they were caught on the hop. The other thing that I'm really going to push back on was Luxon's comment about it being every parent's worst nightmare. It's not. Parents of non-disabled children do not have this very specific nightmare. This is a nightmare situation that is very specific to the disability community, very specific to disabled people, and very specific to parents of disabled children. It's not something you worry about if you have a non-disabled child.
I mean, for me, I don't think it should matter how far it comes out. I just appreciate the general response. Yes, it was horrible that it was not reported by the hospital, not reported by the police like it should have been. An investigation need to be looked into that, but it shouldn't. However long the delay was, no matter if they were shocked and caught off guard or not, I don't think that discredits how well the whole entire house responded. Yes, it wasn't perfect, but we shouldn't discredit. We have to give our politicians credit where credit's due, and maybe look at something we're not going to all agree on, but I think we need to give our politicians credit when they've deserved it. For me.
Yeah, I think just to push back on your pushback, Rebecca, I think this is something that parents of our Māori rangatahi, this is something that they worry about as well, because I think misidentifications goes on all the time with our young rangatahi, and they are picked up particularly regularly as well, not for this issue, but for other issues. So that's something that parents of young kids experience regularly. So this is not, while this issue was quite specific and related to the circumstances around this situation, this is something that happens quite regularly with our police. But I agree with your point around why didn't we know about this earlier? This happened 2 weeks ago. And this was a door-stopping issue with the media saying what happened with this issue. I do think it was good that our politicians didn't decide to lay into Te Whatu Ora around this. Very easy to do. That would have been an incredibly easy line for anyone in the opposition to choose to do. But it was chosen to take this as a on a different line. Because it would have been very easy to say, hey, what's going on with Te Whatu Ora and what's going on with the Henry Bennett Centre up there in Hamilton. That would have been an incredibly easy response to make.
Do you think this incident is going to help travel down the pipeline and help the administration, like maybe Louise Upton or someone of that nature, reconsider what they've been thinking? Do you think this is going to be a bit of an eye-opener for them, or just a bit of a throw under the carpet sort of situation and forget about it?
It goes first on that.
A bit of both. I mean, one of the things I've seen in the comments on social media is a real lack of understanding of what it's like to parent a child with a significant disability. And with an autistic child, particularly an autistic child that's inclined to, go walking, go running from home, it's really incredibly difficult. And I haven't seen any understanding in the comments that when a child gets upset, when a child with autism gets upset and is what we call a runner, that they will just gap it, and they don't have a sense of fear around being so far from home. They're just doing that walking. And a lot of people are questioning how come, this girl was out at 6:30 in the morning climbing a bridge. But for those of us who parent children and know children who are like this, it's a very normal occurrence for that to happen.
There's a very Americanized word that is used for a lot of escaping children, which is called elopement, and people don't realize that elopement isn't just for like your weddings and stuff. It's a very prevalent word in the disability community for leaving your house. But because it's very American, we don't use it a lot here. But this is a perfect example. It's not your typical mental health case. It's it's someone wandering off and getting lost. And unfortunately, they nearly had an incident on a bridge, what was avoided. But this is a perfect example of the type of stuff that we hear in the States. And elopement is a perfect word for it. Yes, it's not your typical use for the word, but I quite like the use of it in this context. Yeah, anyone got a response to that?
I'm not sure. I haven't heard that word before, Blake, so that's a new one to me. Rebecca, you might have something to say about that one.
I'm not familiar with it. No. But it is something I think people don't really understand, what it's like to have a kid whose response to being upset is to go for a very, very, very long walk or run in any direction they choose. And I mean, that's terrifying.
Perhaps I watch too much American TV.
Tell you what, why don't we have a look at one of the other issues that's been really topical this week? And I think everyone knows potentially what we're talking about here, and that's the comments of the Wellington Central MP.
Oh, is that the ones about the police?
Yes, because I mean we are talking about we have started talking about police, but
yes, no, I was yelling at the Radio New Zealand when I was hearing Luxon's comments on that, because I'm like, the police just picked up an 11-year-old and misidentified her. Of course we don't think the police are safe. What are you on about?
Yeah. So
I was so mad at his comments.
Yeah.
Blake,
why don't you lead off? What did you think about?
Are we going to give Timothy credit for this? Because it kind of.
Well, I'm not sure. What do you think, Blake? What's your opinion on what the Wellington Central MP had to say?
Well, after the recent incidents, I do agree with her that we need specialist help for people in certain situations. She was bang on here for me, because it's clear from the psychotic medication that was given and all of from the previous issue that we were talking about, that police have no idea. So I completely agree with her that there need to be specialist groups, a bit like they have. This is what they have in the UK. So they've got a mental health team as part of the ambulance team and a part of the police and all that kind of thing. I fully agree with her that we need something similar of that nature here. And this incident that's come to light, even though it was late, has nailed it down even more for me. I don't know what Rebecca thinks, but I really agree with her on this.
Yeah, a friend of mine, her son is a paramedic, an EMT. And it was really interesting talking with her, because she was saying, that EMTs have a really different approach. They're very much into de-escalation, and it's just so clear when the police arrive, they don't have that de-escalation training and they just make it worse. And they may have someone who's having a mental health episode and they sort of get them calmed down, and then the police arrive and they just trigger them and spark them off again, because they are very much coming from that authoritarian, you need to do as you're told approach, which is incredibly triggering for a lot of people. And so there really does need to be some thought given around actually how do we train police around de-escalation techniques, but also how do we train police when it comes to disability? What's the difference between someone who's non-compliant and someone who simply doesn't understand, or is deaf, or is autistic, or may only communicate using a device, and that device isn't there? Like, there doesn't seem to be any understanding that people communicate in different ways and may not necessarily be able to verbally respond or even understand.
Yeah, and I tend to agree with that side of it. When I was on the DPA, we did a bunch of work through the DPO coalition around what resources need to go to police, what training needs to go to providing that resource around, for example, our deaf community, people who are non-verbal, people who use technology aids to communicate, because there's just not that level of training and support for police in their initial training when they're on the front line. But I think one of the issues with the comments that Samantha Paul made was that they were very black and white, and they could have been more nuanced in terms of how they were put forward. I think they were particularly not well received by certain members of the community who just received them as defunding the police, and I think that's what kind of derailed a conversation like this one, where we are trying to have a more nuanced conversation around how we support members of the disability community who do need a more nuanced conversation around issues like law enforcement. And when you go in there and you say we're going to defund the police, or we're going to get rid of the police entirely, that kind of blows up the whole conversation, where we need a more nuanced discussion about how we support the police to have the resources and the skill sets to be able to support members of our community.
What did you think of Chippy's comment? Because I was quite disappointed, because even though it didn't get picked up a lot in the media, the original story did involve the disability community. So I was really almost disappointed and annoyed with Chippy's comment that they were stupid, because they are not stupid. For me, she's got a point. I don't agree with her a lot, but yeah, on this occasion, she does have a point. There need to be specialized services in our emergency services. I felt that the comment was uncalled for, and it certainly wasn't stupid of her to make these points. I was a bit disappointed. What about you, Nick?
I felt like, I'm certainly not going to criticize, Chippy in terms of the words that he used. I feel like there was a real feeling that those comments were, the comments that Samantha Paul made were ill-advised in terms of the way that she chose to make them. And I think when you do make really strong comments against the police, people naturally kind of recoil against them because of the things that our police have done. And everyone has a natural sort of well, not everyone. A certain portion of our population do feel very strongly positive towards the police, certainly around things like the protest at the Parliament and the really positive action that our police made to protect, not only the Parliament but also our communities from things like that. But so I suppose that comments that are made like that do really make it difficult to have a more nuanced discussion. And I think the issue that I had probably was that it made it more difficult to have a nuanced conversation like we're having right now, when you do make quite strong comments out into the public, and then everyone feels like they have to speak against them. So yeah,
all I'm saying is he could have had a better choice of words, because it did involve the disabled community, which the Labour Party has been pushing very, very hard. And I just felt it was a bit of a step backwards. And maybe that's something we'll get the opportunity to talk with him about in the future. I don't know. But I just felt disappointed by that response. I was even more mortified by the Prime Minister's response. But I felt Chloe was the only one who had sort of a sensible answer. And that's correct, because she's the same party. But I felt she was the only sensible one. I don't know what Rebecca thinks about this.
I think, like listening to Tamitha Paul, I don't think she articulated what she needed to say very well. And I think that's a real problem with the Greens have at the moment. I don't know who their media advisors or who their comms people are, but I don't think they have the skills necessary at this level to be able to advise the Greens party on how to actually communicate what they want to say in a way that people will hear. So that's one issue. Absolutely disappointed in the white middle class men making responses that erased the experiences of both the disabled community and Māori. In terms of our population, we would not necessarily have a good relationship with the police. They're not necessarily the people we'd call first, and we would not necessarily have confidence that they'd be able to treat young people the way that they should be treated, with dignity and respect. Now, they might do most of the time, but the problem, of course, is that most of the time is not all of the time, and it only takes one. It only takes one bad experience to make you super reluctant and super careful. I really like the idea that actually we do need specialist services, and I don't think we should defund the police. But I do think we should fund our services, and we don't fund our mental health services adequately at the moment. We don't fund any frontline services other than police adequately at the moment. And this current government's policies have meant that there's even less funding for this sort of frontline event. And it was really incredibly disappointing to see Luxon not take responsibility for his government's defunding of core services.
Yeah, and I guess as we finish up here, the point that I want to make is me and Nick had the chance recently to sit down with and chat even briefly with different people at Parliament, and there's lots of issues around transport, so this rolls in too. So we need better funding around transport, we need better funding around mental health, we need, all sorts of different funding, and this big incident really opened everyone's eyes, I think. And I hope this is a, quite a eye-opener for everybody. Now, what I wanted to finish with was we had the opportunity to all meet up and catch up recently, and talk about what we wanted for the year ahead by ourselves. So do you want to share any of those comments publicly? What you want to see for the year ahead for our disabled community, for our mental health community, and all those kind of bits and pieces.
Sure. So one of the things that I've really appreciated has been the solidarity that the disability community has shown across disabled people, families, workers in the area. Like, there's been a very united response where we've actually very much been on the same page. Although we might have said slightly different things, that underlying solidarity is there. And I would really love to see that continue, to see us to keep talking to each other not get isolated in our little groups as we've done in the past, but actually be able to figure out and keep figuring out and keep working together so that we're actually progressing and having a united perspective or push on particular things. So that's what I'm hoping for, continued solidarity. I'd like to see that.
And if there's anyone listening, watching, however you're getting this, if there's anyone who wants to come and join us on one of these chats, you're more than welcome. That'd be quite cool to hear different perspectives. Is there anything else you want to touch on before we wrap up, Nick?
Yeah, a couple of things. I appreciate it and support the comments that Rebecca has just made around solidarity. I do think that this year is going to be a really tough year for the community. I'm just thinking about two things. The DSS review is coming, is rumbling on. And I'm just reflecting on the meeting that Blake and I took the other day around transport. And we're coming to have eventually the total mobility review will come. So we've got a lot of these reviews coming, which will eventually give us results. I'm not sure whether that will be positive. I imagine it will not be positive. We've also got the budget coming forward in May. I presume that will be negative, just because of the signals we've been getting. So I think we've got some negative things coming our way in terms of less funding. Well, I presume we're not going to get more funding from this government. So for me, solidarity is going to have to be the way that we move forward. So just for me, I'd really like the disability community to start sitting down or coalescing together with other groups that are also facing similar challenges, and figuring out ways that we can work together more, to start to put some pressure on this government to start to say it's not good enough what's going on, and really start to look beyond this government into the next government, and really start to say, what do we want to have from a new government?
What I would say to that is, we have, just to be transparent to our listeners and watchers, we have sent correspondent to Transport Minister Chris Bishop, and we would encourage him to meet with me and Nick and Hangi Utakiri to see how we can bring transport forward and reduce or abolish some of these caps. So I know some of the people watch and listen, so if you are listening, Mr. Bishop, please accept our invitation. We'd love to sit down and speak with you. Would you like to add anything to that, Nick?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think total mobility is a really important issue. It's crucial for disabled people living right up and down our country. It unlocks opportunities to participate not just in work, but also in our communities. And there's many disabled people that are basically just sitting in their homes, not doing anything. And we really need to figure out how we can make transport more available to more disabled people, and we do that through our total mobility scheme, which goes right the way back to the International Year for Disabled Persons in 1982. So it's a legacy scheme, and it's something that all disabled people really care about. So
one thing I will add is, we're not asking for a podcast chat right now. We just want to chat privately. So please take that into consideration, whoever is listening to this conversation. Any last comments from you, Rebecca?
Total mobility is really important, but also I've been hearing some really horrendous stories from disabled people about the providers that they have to use through the total mobility card. So the total mobility card means you have to use certain taxi providers, and I've been hearing some really hair-raising stories about those taxi providers, and there doesn't seem to be any way to report or to capture those incidents at all. So I'd be very keen to hear how that might be progressed.
Do do you have any other messages from Mr. Bishop, perhaps, Rebecca?
Oh, I would be very interested to hear what Mr. Bishop has to say about public transport and the ways in which he's going to ensure that disabled people are able to travel across the country.
Yeah. So, yeah. Thanks for joining us for this first episode. If there's any feedback, let us know what you want to see, and we'll see you on the next one.